Welcome, folks. Mil-Spec Ops Monkey here. It's going to be your sitrep. It's 9/3/2024, coming to you live here from the Monkey Lounge in the great state of Texas. As we get into what is happening out there in the world, big question: are we spreading our military too thin? I personally think that it definitely appears that way. We've got roughly, and then it may actually be higher than this, but roughly 500,000 of our 1.8 million, if you count reservists, all the other stuff that goes with it. We have about 2.1 million people in our military. That includes, again, the reservists and contractors, other stuff. But our core military, talking, not, I think 1.2 million that are active duty military. And you take half of that, basically put them outside of the United States, either in Asia or in Europe and the Middle East. I think those numbers may be actually low. All right. We have been watching flight after flight after flight for a very long period of time, going in both directions. So the key is as we go and pick on other nations like Venezuela, for example, look, the guy's a dictator. There's no doubt in my mind. But we're going to go into the story here where we actually go in and steal his airplane and then fly it out. Absolutely amazing. Our government has no limits or limitations in terms of who and where they will mess around with other people and other countries in the world. You wonder why the United States is hated so much when you get outside of our own country. Of course, you're taking all those haters that hate us, especially in the Middle East, and you're bringing them here right to our doorsteps. That is a bad move, right? So let's do this. I'm going to jump over to Skyglass. As always, this is the #1 tracker from a flight perspective. And if you don't have it, you definitely want to get it, because this thing will certainly elevate your ability to track things at a different level. Okay. And so we are starting out. I've got the air refuelers up 26 over the United States, which really isn't a huge number. I got one abroad. This 26 is actually an average. 25 is our average. So we'll take those out. We'll get rid of those traces. And then we're going to get a bottoms up number here. And I've already stripped out the trainers, sitting at around 230 mil aircraft up over the United States. And again, I mean, there's a lot of trainers that have been pulled out. Keep in mind that it is very wet here in the center of Texas. So, going to damper some of our trainer numbers. Hold them. So, H-60 Blackhawks, again, up off the eastern seaboard, East Coast. Very active, kind of spread out across the United States. The area you think you'd normally see them is right here in the Panhandle. We don't see any of those. There's 29 H-60 Blackhawks up. Take those out. And then let me go down the line here and see if there's anything else that really catches my mind. Let me take out those 35s as well. 17s, Eastern Seaboard looks to be pretty heavy. H-47 banana copters. Some here in kind of that, where would that be? Kind of Virginia, Norfolk side of the house. Okay. Really anything catches my eye. So, okay, let's limit this. Let's get into our watch list as we start out here over across the drink in Europe. And what I'm doing, those circles are just areas of visibility. So if it's over your head, that's what they're able to look at, those large circles. And you can see that German Intel balloon. So there's a French E3 Sentry, and you can see the reach that one has well into other countries. Same thing with this German Intel balloon, and then that one is also, that's an Intel balloon, but see that yellow ring, that is how far that single individual balloon can see. And we've got a low altitude one there in Turkey. A little Navy P-8 bouncing out of Portugal. Nothing in the Middle East. We jump over here to the United States. And again, you can see the rings from the Intel balloons. All right. Now, coming up this weekend on my Monkey Minute over on Patreon, I'm going to be talking more in detail about this mass surveillance and where that's all headed from a biblical perspective. So if you're not on Patreon, love to have you over here. Join us. And it is not super expensive, but it is our go-to platform, more so than YouTube. So, okay, now you can see as we get over here in the United States, I see a little, I think a third-party Intel. It's going NA, so it doesn't, it's incognito. It doesn't want you to see it, that little purple plane. A lot of little Navy P-8s bouncing out of Jacksonville. That's kind of normal. That one right there is going to be, I think that's Department of Justice. Dash 8. No, sorry, that's NOAA. And which will be NASA, NOAA. They're doing the science stuff, right? Science stuff, weather. And then that one right there is actually incognito. We've got Jana. That's going to be your DOJ. Just getting airborne, it looks like, out of DC. And just have a couple others. That's an Uber for Canadian Special Ops. A little further south. Let me see if I've got anything that really catches my eye of the U.S. I think we're okay so far. Let's get on over here to the intel side. Very, very active and busy around Kaliningrad, looking very close into Belarus, all the way into Ukraine, into Constanta, into Moldova, into Crimea, right? Remember, these are side looking. So as the plane's flying forward, it's looking out the sides. And then this one right here, I do honestly believe they are really worried about Serbia and Kosovo. That's why they keep going back and forth over these areas. And that's Serbia right there, because Serbia is pro-Russia. You got them right in the mix of where we're parking all of our troops. So that could be a very volatile situation for them if things go hot. And then, of course, Israel over their area, doesn't take much to cover 300 square miles. So they are certainly looking at everything around the region, really, from there. Nothing in Australia. I see a little bounce there in Southeast Asia. Get to the United States, and it gets really interesting because now I'm not really sure. These are strange flight patterns for an Intel aircraft. Unless it's transitioning, which I don't think it is, just very strange. But do note that they are up and around the Buffalo area, which is a little concerning because that's where we keep seeing all of our nuke sniffer activity over Buffalo. Right? Okay, let's talk drones. Japan's pretty active in terms of drone activity. Notice it's on the side towards China. Not uncommon, though. That's we see that quite a bit over there, especially right now, given the current environment. This is a high altitude one out of Bahrain, and then you can see some low altitude ones around Turkey. And then this one, it's going to be one of your Q4 drones, like the thing in the picture right over here, right? High altitude, super high tech. And you can see them also looking very, very closely at Kaliningrad, all the way up into, there's Kaliningrad. And then you can see them too, looking around, little low altitude one there in and out over the water there. But this right here is looking into Belarus. Why are they so concerned about Belarus? Well, Belarus is on the move. They've got and are amassing troops on the northern end of Ukraine. Right. And then little low altitude ones. That one's St. Louis. This one is kind of over central Texas. And then little one there. Very unusual not to see a lot of drone activity or intelligence activity over the United States. Very uncommon. Okay. All right. Let's talk sub hunters. Again, 5 days worth of sub hunting. And you can see interior of the United States, not much to speak of, but the traffic we typically see coming out of Jacksonville Naval Air Station has been nothing. And then a lot of flights out of the UK, but you can see them going around and just off the coastline of Kaliningrad, looking very closely, probably at everything that's in port. That's going to be more than likely a Navy P-8, right? Then notice this one that's looking closely at Israel and the stuff off of Egypt and into that general area. Probably worried about some subs kind of sneaking up on all of our Navy assets that are in the. You get down to Australia, you can see them kind of branching out, headed northbound. One of them looks to be headed into Malaysia and the other into Guam. Okay, let's talk R-135s. These are going to be nuke sniffers, or sorry, not nuke sniffers, SIG Intel. We'll talk nuke sniffer here in just a minute. Again, around Kaliningrad. So anything that's transmitting, they're gathering it, whether it's satellite, whether it is cell traffic, whether it's radar systems, anything and everything. And then, of course, they're looking closely into Belarus as well, SIG Intel. Now, the Constant Phoenix, I haven't seen them up in probably at least 2 weeks. So I don't know where they are or what they're doing, but they are not showing any airborne flight. And then you can see this one. Notice that's broken. It's as it heads out over Atlanta, over Georgia, and out what looks to be out over the Atlantic, maybe down into the Caribbean. Again, SIG intel. Okay. All right. Let's talk E6. Right. TACAMO, take charge, move out. This will tell you, remember, this is talking to your nukes on the subs. This tells you where our subs are. Notice we got them loitering off the west coast of California, the Gulf of Mexico, and the eastern seaboard, which is good. I'm glad they're protecting the United States because, as I mentioned, is our military spread too thin? Absolutely, in a big way. Right? Let's talk AWACS, which is also very, very light. Notice the one leaving the United States headed up to Alaska. Then you see it get very busy in Alaska. Right? Advanced warning. So this aircraft is looking for nukes. It's looking at ship activity. And see the broken trace south of Hawaii? All right. Now, let's go over to Europe. And it gets a little interesting because you'll notice that a lot of those man-in-the-middle circles, right, over Denmark, over Sweden, over Norway, headed all the way up to the north, probably looking for nuke activity there as it gets around the horn there towards Russia. And then you can see some activity there over France. Well, that's Constanta right here. And it just looks like they're just kind of loitering in the area. Probably are looking for nuke stuff. This one over the Mediterranean, it's probably looking at ships. But it could also be gathering any type of cell traffic coming from those ships. Then you can see the one over France. So, okay. Now, I'm going to come back to the C-17s here in just a second. We're going to get into some of the stories. We're going to talk C-17s. We're going to talk air refuelers. Okay. So let's just go ahead and get into that. So let's pop over here. We're going to start off with Flashbang and his schedule. It looks like he is coming out of vacation. In the next couple of days, he's headed up to what looks to be Wisconsin. And if we get over here, you can see, let me back this up a little bit. And you'll see this is a standard flashbang. This is Madison here. So he's over at La Crosse, I think. But this is flashbang, just given the size of the bar. Of course, this one is, again, expanded, oversized. Not sure what we have here, but this, if it's VIP, this could be anything from, more than likely, Bob Marley. I would say it's Trump, but I don't think they're giving him any type of large TFRs, right? And we'll look at that in a minute. You can see we got some more disturbances coming into this general area. And then we've got several. So we're getting ready to hit peak hurricane season. So, definitely stay on your toes for this one because there ain't no telling where they're going to go. But it looks like we got 3 systems as we head into peak season. It's been kind of quiet, so I'm surprised. Okay, look at this. Taiwan to buy nearly 2,000 more Stinger missiles as China, basically the tensions with China escalate. Okay. So it's actually 1,985 Stinger missiles is what they're going to buy. But keep in mind, too, that as I've mentioned before, if China's going to make a move on Taiwan, it's probably going to be before the election. I say that because I don't think they're going to mess with Trump. I think Trump will absolutely thump them if he comes into power. So Taiwan is trying to ride this thing out until Trump gets in office, I am sure. But this is just another element. No telling how long it'll take for them to get those 2,000, but they're trying to buy it. Okay. I say that because Raytheon, basically, we sold a whole bunch, or I say sold, we gave a whole bunch to Ukraine, and which basically depleted everything the United States had. And so Raytheon, I guess it's been about 2 years, has basically had to start to manufacture Stinger missile systems. So then we may be at that window, have the ability. All right, let's get over here. U.S. seizes Venezuelan President Maduro's plane and flies it to Florida. Now, this is the equivalent of stealing Air Force One. They say they seized it because, he was under some sanctions and it was a violation, so they went in and stole it. Now, remember, this is the same guy they're accusing of stealing the election. Look, he is a tyrant. There's no doubt in my mind. But the United States has a tendency to kind of do these kind of things, right? Our CIA, our deep state. So us going in and stealing this guy's $13 million plane and flying it to Miami, I think is a stupid move because now we've incited the Venezuelans against the United States. I say that, but from a military perspective, not the civilians. Civilians are actually uprising against Maduro because they believe he also stole the election. So, but who are we to go around telling everybody in the world how to run their democracy? And when we can't even run. So, putting that out there. All right, look at this. Armed Venezuelan gangs take over Colorado apartment complex. That's in Aurora. Now, there has been talk that you've got the Hells Angels coming in and they're going to straighten these boys out, but there is nobody that has been able to confirm that, right? And so you can see them. This is them operating, and then actually you can go down and see some video where these boys just take their sweet time going up here armed, for that matter, right? That's a pretty nice gun they have there. But yeah, I mean, you can look at what these boys are wielding. Not actually supposed to own guns because I do believe they don't have a Second Amendment right because they're not citizens of the United States. So anyway, speaking of Venezuela, what happens there, we'll have to keep an eye on it. But look at this. U.S. soldiers are assaulted by a Turkish mob after a Navy ship makes its port in Turkey. Some images of these guys being grabbed. This dude's yelling for help. And again, like I said, they're telling them, Yankee, go home. You know, we've been talking about the fact that the United States has been meddling in everybody else's politics, including Israel, for quite some time. In fact, Obama got his hand caught in the cookie jar trying to tip the Israeli election. And, you know, at the end of the day, it makes people very mad. And they don't like us very much. And if you travel abroad, you really don't want to go advertising you're an American because you could face some hostility. All right, let's talk about what's going on here when it comes to the NOTAMs. You'll notice we got just kind of the standard boxes here, the danger boxes off the east or west coast here along this side. They're tight. They're not expanded out where they were previously. I don't know what's going on. Maybe somebody just didn't expand them. We also noticed the ones down here at the southern border are missing. But get across the drink a little and see if we've got any that are unexpected. This one around St. Petersburg I find interesting. This one over Cyprus, we expect that. This one seems to be new. It's kind of over that the mouth of the Red Sea going up towards Cairo, towards Egypt. In fact, that would be, this is where they pass through in terms of the Suez Canal. So the fact that they put those up over that general area, interesting. Things are still popping off here by the Houthis in the Red Sea, by the way. It hasn't changed it. And let me see anything down over Australia. This is probably LiDAR. They do have danger boxes. Right. Move on. Over to Dover. Okay. Now let's talk. We get into the Dover aspect of this. I do want to point out that we're going to talk the heavies. Notice a lot of Atlas Airs coming in, Amerijet coming in. Where do they go? That's the key. All right. RZE Poland, Ramstein look to be the main, those three flights leaving. Now let's look at the C-17 traffic. And just notice over the last 5 days, look at the thick traces of C-17 stuff headed down into the Middle East. And you see that spaghetti chain. And then notice too that you've got some flights that actually look to be goes into Iran, which is strange. I doubt that's a U.S. asset, but it is coming out of Bahrain. See how thick those traces are going in the Middle East where they break off and they basically kill the transponder or kill our ability to track them. And then the flurry of stuff going into England, a flurry of activity into Germany. See all those trace lines going across the drink. Again, 5 days. I haven't seen anything indicating that they've dropped off, other than they do wipe these flights in a lot of cases where you can't see them on the boards. Of course, in and out of, which is interesting, Biggs Army Airfield, a lot of flights, but where does it go? Port-au-Prince, Haiti. So it looks like they're taking some equipment, maybe bringing some things in to that area, maybe MRAPs, etc. A lot of that came out of Charleston, but the fact that they're putting those folks in, that actually could be U.S. military troops going into Haiti to help stabilize stuff. Very police. Then, of course, you can see a flurry of activity there in northern Australia. We go back over. Let me back this up just a tad, and you can see Japan's got a fair amount. I don't buy these traces going straight over China, not C-17s. Not a chance. I think that's just broken bad trace. Now, there was one flight that went down into Nigeria. Now, we're going to look at that. That's going to be an air refueler. Now, notice very active over Japan in terms of air refueling. Nothing over Australia. Little blip there in Southeast Asia or Malaysia. Then you can see this one just kind of goes around Israel, like avoids going over any of Israel, any of Gaza. It's kind of coming in over Egypt. And then you can see that one broken trace going into Iraq, which is probably supporting some type of a mission. And then that one, look at this one headed down to Niger. And then very hot and heavy over and into Turkey, over Constanta towards the Black Sea, which would be an indicator we're supporting fighters around that general region, right? That's Moldova right there. And then here, that's going to be right on the border. That's over RZE Poland. That's right on the border of Ukraine. So maybe they're just loitering some F-16s in that general area. Then over England, over the North Sea, and then out over Spain, France, general. A couple of traces going across the drink, which would be an indicator that we're moving fighters, but it looks like most of them have already been pushed into play. And you can see them running routes down to Central America along the border, southern border of Texas. But in and out of Colombia, that is interesting because remember, we've got stuff heating up when it comes to Maduro. And we look to be putting maybe some troops down there in Colombia. Look at these weird flights. This is a very unusual flight pattern, by the way, for air refuelers. They typically are flying in a marshalling pattern. So when you see these long strings, that's pushing. More than likely, we just sent a bunch of fighters up there to Alaska. And you can see the broken trace headed into Asia. Yeah, eventually. All right. So that gives you kind of a back of a napkin. Now let's talk transports. We're going to start off with Global X. And I just want to point out very light for them, but notice that they're going from Texas border to Texas border, Virginia, or up there near Washington, D.C., and in and out of Tennessee and out of Miami. So very light. I don't see anything going down to Central America. These are probably just taking folks, illegals. All right. No doubt about that. Now, the one that really tells the story is Omni. Look at the flurry of Omni flights. It's just as big as the C-17 flights over the last 5 days. What are they doing here domestically? Look at the amount of flights into Central America, but look at this super thick headed down to Colombia. Now, they could be exfilling and bringing illegals back, or they're taking troops down there. Going with what's going on right here in Venezuela makes you kind of wonder if we don't have some troops or some boots on the ground kind of surrounding them, right? We saw the nuke sniffer that was running and operating out of Caracas. I haven't seen anything from that in a little while, but eyes on it. And then notice, too, Puerto Rico. That one's headed into Haiti, Port-au-Prince. Okay. Now we talked transports. Now let's kind of break out. Let's get into, as we looked at the stuff leaving Dover, don't have anything out of Biggs Army Airfield other than C-17 traffic. But this is Camber, and just notice that one's Kuwait. This one looks to be over near Crete. Let's see. And then we've got several headed across the drink, coming back across the drink, and then this one be just getting air. But notice they're headed into Europe, Middle East. Okay, National Cargo. We just pay attention to them. Look at the guys coming out of Alaska headed into Chicago. That more than likely is bringing in some artillery from South Korea. And then you see one going across the United States from Cherry Point to Yuma. Troops, maybe at 40,000 feet, 512 miles. Okay. Now, I do want to back up and just remind you, Yuma does have an immigrant camp there, right? But they also have, it's a proving ground. So they, going from Cherry Point to there, we know Cherry Point also has a footprint. So, all right, this can be your Brits. Don't have anything going in the United States, just looks to be returning back home from, Finland or Sweden. That's actually not Finland. That's going to be, we get over here to England, just to get a back of the napkin idea of what is really kind of flowing in and out of that area. Notice the Germans. The Germans are back. They are flying in and out of England. Thought you'd hear that after World War II, right? But then we've got several. That's a British, Germans. We go down a little further. TOW, an Airbus, so that's also probably English. Grizzly, that may be a US C-130. Go down. I did see there's German Air Force. I actually saw several other flights that were on the board here that have dropped off, but pretty active and busy when it comes to England. And then this one, this is going to be Ramstein, Germany. Just notice Atlas Air arriving. There's that Camber flights. We talked about those. This one's coming out of Turkey, Dover, and then it leaves. This one that's immigration. That's taking illegals, Middle Easterners, guaranteed to JFK from Ramstein, right? That's Omni. Serve many masters. Okay, now just pay attention to this because it becomes very interesting. Germany, the far right AfD party wins the state election for the first time. Let's go down a little bit. There is a little nuance to this. It is the first time the far right party has won with the most seats in German state parliament since World War II. Yeah, that's right. The far right actually was the Nazi party, and they took power there just around the Second World War, just before it actually. So, yeah, it's funny how they leave the little details out up in the headline until you get down below and then you realize, oh, well, this is the first time since the Nazis took power. That's key, folks. That's key. And then also look at this. Germany has begun deporting 28 Afghans after unveiling new security package. So I guess they didn't meet the grade. But don't think for a minute this isn't going to be a continuation. And as they go through and start to do this around the world, I think if Trump gets in, we're going to see en masse millions getting sent out of the trick will be rounding them up. All right, German Air Force, as always, on the go, but this one is always the one that makes you go, Coming out of Edwards Air Force Base, headed back to the East Coast, A400 German Air Force. The Germans are really stretching the wings here. A lot of activity in Canada, a lot of activity in here and over into Asia. All right, let's talk RZE Poland, and let me see if I got anything catches my eye. I see German Air Force again. I see a SAM flight coming in. That's going to be a blue and white dignitary. A couple Camber flights on the arrival board, 747s. That's going to be NATO that's in there. So pretty active when it comes to Ukraine. Right? If you didn't hear this, just put it out there again. I told you this was going to happen. Right? Now, they did deliver, I think, 6 F-16s total. They acted like it was just, squadron upon squadron. They don't really have a lot of pilots trained that can fly these yet, that are combat certified. This one guy he made the grade combat certified, and he actually crashed and died. So this you're going to see a lot more of. Just putting that out there. I think they're either going to get shot down or these guys are just going to otter in the ground because they. All right, now look at this. Ukraine carries out one of the biggest ever drone attacks in Russia. They just did something the other day. Evidently, this is bigger than that one. But they've got targets. You can see them. They're hitting the oil refineries, which is really going to make them mad. They, again, are poking the bear. They're trying to incite a war because Zelensky knows that the minute Trump gets into office, his goose is cooked. So, but there's another one here too. This is actually a drone dropping thermite. This is a Russian drone dropping thermite, which is just, it'll burn through anything. But this, you can see there's a wood line where they believe some soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers, were in, and they basically flush them out. Okay, Constanta, very busy. Look at the amount of flights in and out. This is base commanders, some C-130s, Brio, that's going to be an intel flight, and then several others that are in and out of there. So that place is on the uptick. Now, Israel, you just heard they just killed 6 hostages. Israel vows to settle the score with Hamas after the hostage deaths. I do believe they mean it. I've been watching the map, and it is getting very, very heated over there. So let's move on over here. Okay. Now, Britain suspends some arms exports with Israel. So this is pretty much sanctioning Israel is what they're doing. They're coming in and they're basically saying, all right, we're no longer going to provide X, Y, and Z. And they did it real time. So as Israel is trying to fight off the enemy, England comes in and basically stops giving them all the stuff they need to fight them. Now, it says here the affected items include military aircraft, helicopters, and drone components, as well as items for ground targeting. Thank you, England. Moving on. Actually, that's our last story. So, all right, we're going to keep our eye on the Israel thing. Again, it is heating up like a junkie spoon when it comes to the Middle East. Clearly, we're starting to see a bunch more train rides with desert camo stuff across the United States, headed to the East Coast, going to be on boats and C-17s as they continue to fly that stuff in. I do think that there's something up their sleeve that this is going to go hot. But again, we've got potential conflict with Russia. We've got it maybe with China. We have Israel popping off, and maybe even Iran when it comes down to it. And then you've got Venezuela, who we've just gone down and messed with. So, yeah, buckle up, folks. I think it's getting ready to get really interesting. We got about 60 days until the election, and I think there are probably going to be some things of shock and awe that happen in those next 60. So, stay frosty and keep that powder dry. We'll talk soon. God bless. Monkey out.